Some people seem to progress in language learning so fast that it doesn't even seem real. And if you're anything like me, you've experienced the other side of that. Spending years trying and putting in time, but never actually getting anywhere. And I used to assume that those people just had a better method than me. That they found some secret app or system that I just hadn't discovered yet. So I kept switching, and I always ended up in the same place. Quitting and then having to come back a few months later and start all over again. But here's what I actually found to be true. My progress didn't change when I found a better method. It changed when I found something that I'd actually keep doing. And one summer, I finally broke that cycle of quitting and starting over again. In that summer, I stopped chasing the most efficient method out there. I just decided to consume as much French input as I possibly could. I was just listening constantly and not really worried about whether it was the optimal approach for me. And for the first time, I actually enjoyed what I was doing. And I didn't feel the urge to switch methods, and I did not quit. And that was when I started making real progress. So the question I've been trying to answer since then is, what actually separates the people who improve fast from the people who stay stuck? I think it comes down to two things, and neither of them is the method. So the first thing I noticed was that people who improve fast aren't necessarily using the absolute best method. They're using the method they actually enjoy. And that sounds really obvious, but most people don't actually do this. And for a long time, when I was in that cycle of quitting and restarting, I tried using Anki decks with the most common words in the language as my main way of study. On paper, it makes complete sense. It's worked for people before, high frequency words, an efficient memory system, but I couldn't last more than a couple days, and I absolutely dreaded opening it. So I'd quit and feel guilty, and then I'd start over with something else. The problem wasn't the method itself, the problem was that I hated doing it. And there's actually a scientific reason why that matters more than most people realize. A linguist named Stephen Krashen, I'm sure you've heard of him before, proposed that emotional factors like anxiety and boredom lead to something called an affective filter. So when those negative emotions are there, your filter goes up and your brain literally has a harder time consuming the input. You're putting in the time, but the language isn't getting through the way it should. And when you enjoy what you're doing, that filter drops. Your brain processes and absorbs the language almost unconsciously. So it's not just that enjoyment keeps you consistent. Enjoyment is literally changing what happens inside of your brain while you're learning. Two learners can literally sit down and do the exact same thing for 30 minutes, but if one of them loves it and one of them hates it, they're still going to get different results, even if the method is identical. This is why chasing the absolute most efficient method is the wrong game entirely. The most efficient method is the one your brain is actually open to receiving. But enjoyment only explains part of the gap, because I've also seen plenty of people who genuinely enjoy language learning but still don't make fast progress. And then when I looked at what was missing, it came down to something completely different: how learning fit into their day. The second thing I noticed about fast learners is that they're not necessarily more disciplined than everyone else. They just stopped having to decide whether to show up. Here's what I mean. Most people approach language learning by trying to find extra time throughout their day to do it. And they tell themselves, oh, I'll study when I have a free moment. But free moments are unpredictable, as you guys know. And every time you have to actually decide whether to use one for language learning or not, it leads to indecision, and you're creating an opportunity for yourself to say no. So fast learners don't find extra time. They find places where learning can live inside the time they already have. There's a concept called habit stacking. The idea is simple. Your brain has habits that it does every day almost without thinking, like brushing your teeth or making your coffee. And at some point, these actions literally become automatic. And when you attach a new behavior to one of these old habits, the new behavior gets pulled along by the momentum of the old one. And studies show it takes about 60 days for the stacked habit to become automatic on its own. And for me, it looks like this. Every night before bed, I was already going through the same routine. So I thought, why not just add 10 minutes where I do Anki and speaking practice to the end of the routine? I didn't study more than I was before. I just stopped having to decide whether to do it or not. It was already happening before I had time to talk myself out of it. And that's the whole secret. It's not discipline, it's design. And the interesting thing is that this works even better when you combine it with the first point we talked about. When you stick a habit you genuinely enjoy onto an existing routine, you feel rewarded. You're not forcing yourself through something miserable every night. You're doing something your brain is actually open to. So the affective filter drops and the habit sticks, and your progress starts going faster than ever before. Most people just wait for motivation to come to them before they start. But fast learners build a system where showing up happens automatically, and then their motivation follows. So let's bring this all together. Because when you put these two things side by side, the gap between fast learners and stuck learners looks a lot less like some secret method and a lot more like something you can actually build for yourself. So here's what I actually think is happening when you see someone improving at a pace that doesn't seem real. It's not that they found the perfect method. It's not that they're more talented or disciplined than you. It's that they built something that fits their life well enough that consistency just stopped being a struggle for them. They found something they actually enjoy, so their brain is actually open to receiving what they're learning. And then they attached it to something already in their day, so showing up is not a decision anymore. And that's the gap. And the reason most learners never get there is not because they're not capable. It's just because no one told them what they were actually supposed to be building. So they keep chasing the perfect method, trying to find hours in their day and grinding through things they hate, and still wondering why nothing sticks. And if that sounds familiar, I want you to leave a comment below. Tell me, what's the method or app you tried that you absolutely could not stick with, and why was it so hard to stay consistent with that? I'm genuinely curious for what you guys have to say, and I read all the comments. Because I think whatever your answer is to that question tells you a lot more about where you need to go next than any method recommendation ever could.